Obscenity is not okay during primetime television. Last night at the dinner table, my 4-year-old told me I was full of shit, and I know exactly where he gets this kind of thing. It's from television, and it's partially my fault, but it's also partially the fault of the makers of these television programs. We all see this on TV, but none of us do anything to really stop it. So how do we know what's obscene? And how do we know it's affecting our children? What do the majority of Americans think about this? How do we know our children are absorbing this? And is the problem getting better or worse over time? And what do we do to eventually fix the problem? All of these questions are running through your head. And luckily for you, I'm here to answer them. In 1973, in Miller versus California, the judge came down with a ruling that helps us decide what's obscene. He put out 4 questions that we're all supposed to ask. Does the average person find that it violates contemporary community standard? Does the work taken as a whole appeal to a prurient interest in sex? Does the work show patently offensive sexual content? And does the work lack serious redeeming literacy, artistic, political, or scientific merit? So basically what this says is it's obscene if the general public thinks it's obscene. So what changed? What changed since 1973 when George Carlin was talking about the 7 dirty words you can't say on television, and now when the majority of those 7 words are heard in every program several times during the half-hour segment? How many people think primetime is obscene? The FCC receives hundreds upon thousands of reports of violations every year. So this means that someone thinks it's a problem, but no one's doing anything about it. In 1996, so take into consideration that this was 5 years ago, U.S. News and World Report said that 81% of Americans saw an increase in incivility. And when asked about the consequences of this incivility, they cited eroding moral values, an increase in violence, and divided communities. So this is a problem, and most people think it is a problem, but still no one's doing anything about it. So how does this affect our children? The Kaiser Foundation found that 81% of parents find their children repeating things they've seen on television, as in action movies make them hit their siblings, and sharing on Dora the Explorer helps them share with their peers. Over a 15-year study, the University of Michigan found that men and women who watched violent television shows were more likely to behave in violent and aggressive ways. And the National Institute of Mental Health says that children may become less sensitive to the pain and suffering of others, children may become more fearful of the world around them, and children may be more likely to behave in aggressive or harmful ways towards others. So this is a problem. And the incivility that we just talked about is going to be on the rise if we don't do something, and we don't do something quickly. How do we know our children are absorbing the primetime television? Well, first of all, let's look at their bedtime. KidsHealth.org says that kids need 10 to 12 hours of sleep every night. So you figure they get up at roughly 7 o'clock to go to school, so they go to bed between 7 and 11. Coincidence that primetime is considered between 7 and 11, and family programming is considered between 7 and 9 p.m. Let's look at the time slots for 7 to 9 p.m. Grey's Anatomy, one of my favorite shows, that's its time slot. But there's no way I would let my 4-year-old watch Derek's and Meredith's sex life play out on television. According to Iowa State University, only 10% of the programs that children watch are actually viewed towards children. So the problem is getting worse. In 1997, the age-based ratings began, and that's the little black box on the top of your screen that says TV 14, or has a little L for language or S for sexual content. Since then, a Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media did an evaluation of 7 of the major broadcasting networks, which includes ABC, Hello Grey's Anatomy, and they found that profanity increased to a rate of 1 word every 8 minutes. So what do we do to fix the problem? Turn off your TV is a great way. Spend more time with your family outside playing sports, or those board games that you always see advertised on TV are great too. But if you choose to use your TV as a pacifier or a babysitter, or whatever your prerogative is, pay attention to what your kids watch and contact the FCC if you see something that's not supposed to be there. And when you do contact the FCC, note that you can do it through their website, through email, phone, fax. They don't care, they just want to know that you have a problem with it. When you report the violations, keep in mind what happened. And they're probably going to follow up with more questions. So you need to write down which program, what they said, why it's a violation. In FCC versus the Pacifica Foundation, the judge decided, broadcasting invades our homes. It is impossible to avoid everything that is offensive. It is also more accessible than any other form of speech, particularly for children who cannot read yet. The welfare of our nation's youth overrides freedom of speech. That came down in 1978, and think about all the things that are allowed on television now that weren't allowed on in 1978. Violence and vulgar language negatively influence our children. We know they see this. We know that we should take arms against this type of deprivation of knowledge. The problem is getting worse. And don't forget, obscenity is not protected speech. Report violations to the FCC and protect our nation's youth. If you won't do it for your own children, keep in mind, I don't want to hear shit at the dinner table anymore.